and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues and friends. Let me start by thanking Origin for the kind invitation to share some thoughts on trade and its contribution to helping grow and protect businesses, often small and family owned. Both the WTO Director General, Dr. Ogosi Okonjo-Iweala, and I wish that we could join you today in person. But much like international trade itself, we need to adapt to the changing circumstances. Nonetheless, it is a great pleasure to address you on Dr. Ngosi's behalf, and I pass on her best wishes. In my brief remarks, I would like to touch upon three elements: the trade dimension of geographical indications, the role of the WTO framework, and the unfinished discussion on the GI register for wines and spirits. Coming from a coffee growing family in El Salvador, I know firsthand how important local conditions are for making a distinctive product. For businesses and economies, especially smaller ones, that difference opens a path to competing in international markets in ways that do not depend only on size or on cost. Coffee can be traded as a generic commodity, or it can tell a richer story, one of altitude, soil, climate, and tradition. For example, in El Salvador, the Apaneca Ilamatepec region illustrates how a name linked to origin can help consumers and buyers recognize a distinctive quality and reputation. And that connection between a product and its origin becomes part of its value. This, in very practical terms, is part of the promise of geographical indications. It is not only a development story, it is also a trade story. In global markets, lasting value is created not only by scale and efficiency, but also through differentiation, reputation, and trust. This matters especially for smaller producers and smaller economies. They may not necessarily compete on volume or cost, but they may have products whose value comes from quality, reputation, and origin. This brings us to the WTO framework. Through the TRIPS agreement, WTO members broke new ground by bringing GIs into the multilateral trading system. They did so in a very distinct WTO way, through compromise. The TRIPS standards on GI protection represent a negotiated balance among members with different interests, different legal traditions, and approaches to GI protection. That compromise is reflected in the minimum standards of protection across the WTO membership. Importantly, these standards preserve space for diverse approaches to protecting GIs at the national or regional level. But the TRIPS agreement did not settle everything. One issue left for further work is the negotiation in the TRIPS Council in special session of a multilateral system of notification and registration of GIs for wines and spirits. These negotiations have not advanced substantively for some time now. Yet, the broader landscape has not stood still. Many members have addressed GIs in bilateral and regional trade agreements. National and regional systems of protection have been strengthened. At the international level, the registration landscape has evolved, including through the Geneva Act of the Lisbon system. Market conditions have evolved as well. GIs are increasingly promoted and used in digital environments, from online marketplaces to search engines, domain names, and social media. And this creates new opportunities, but also raises the stakes for transparency, reliable information, and consumer trust. This shifting context does not resolve the differences among WTO members, but it does invite for reflection. In particular, it raises the question of whether members see practical value in reassessing what a truly multilateral register for wines and spirits GIs could offer today. Whether in terms of transparency, access to reliable information, legal certainty, or the effect a registration should carry. At a minimum, the changed context may offer a basis for members to consider whether a fresh, practical discussion on a register with broad multilateral coverage, including all major trading economies, would be worthwhile. Ultimately, these are questions for members. The WTO is a member driven organization, and the pace of work depends on members' interest and engagement. This is also the spirit of the chair's recent efforts in the TRIPS Council in special session. Through consultations with delegations and exchanges with stakeholders, he is encouraging members to consider whether recent developments may offer fresh perspectives on the register. The GI community has a role to play here too by informing the domestic and regional authorities that participate in the WTO process and making the case of multilateral ambition. This also fits with the broader WTO conversation on reform following the 14th Ministerial Conference held in March 2026. Members are looking at how the organization can work more effectively with discussions that are practical, focused, and responsive to today's trading realities. As WTO negotiating structures and topics get a fresh look, this may be an opportunity, an important moment for the GI community to share its vision for the multilateral trading system. Let me close by thanking Origin once again for the invitation and for bringing together this community here in Geneva. I wish you very successful meeting and productive discussions. Thank you very much.